I'm 48 years old. I have lived most of my life in what I thought was a happy marriage to Tatiana. We met when we were 18 years old and have not been apart since. We have 2 children who are now grown and gone off to build their own lives. Our whole lives were bound together by strong bonds of love and trust. But one day, everything changed. Suspicion started creeping in on me about a year ago. Tatiana suddenly began to pay more attention to her appearance. She often went to the hairdresser, enrolled in a fitness club, and began to buy expensive cosmetics. She often stayed late at work and was always talking about meetings and corporate events. As a gullible person, I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought it was her way of fighting age. The night came when I was finally convinced of my suspicions. It was a normal Friday night, and Tatiana was late for work again. She said that they were having a corporate party, and she had to be there. I offered to pick her up so that we could go home together. Tatiana unexpectedly refused, saying that she would return with a colleague. This alarmed me. I decided to follow her to dispel my doubts or, on the contrary, to confirm my suspicions. When evening came, I drove up to her company's office and watched from afar. After a while, I saw her and her coworkers begin to leave the building, laughing and talking animatedly. They headed toward a nearby restaurant, and I followed, trying to remain inconspicuous. Once inside the restaurant, I chose a table in the corner where I could watch them while staying in the shadows. My heart was beating like crazy, and my mind was racing with dark thoughts. An inner voice urged me to leave, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I felt I had to know the truth. After a while, I noticed Tatiana and her colleague Alexander, whom she often mentioned in conversations, started flirting. He leaned closer, whispering something in her ear, and she laughed back, lightly touching his arm. They seemed to be completely absorbed in each other, oblivious to their surroundings. I sat still, clenching my fists under the table, trying to keep my composure. They ordered wine and continued to chat, their gazes becoming more and more frank. I saw Alexander gently touch her hand, and she didn't pull it away, but smiled back at him. At that moment, my heart squeezed with pain and a premonition of the inevitable. Finally, they decided to move to the far corner of the restaurant, where there were fewer people and more privacy. I watched as they stood up, and Tatiana placed her hand lightly on his shoulder as they made their way to their chosen spot. There, behind a half-closed screen, they continued their gentle touching and kissing. I sat dazed at what I saw, unable to believe my eyes. My wife of 30 years was betraying me before my eyes. My heart was broken. I decided not to make a scene on the spot, but rage was boiling up in my soul. Back home, I began to consider what to do next. I decided to gather all the evidence of the affair. Over the next few weeks, I hired a private investigator to follow Tatiana. He took numerous photos and notes confirming her affair with Alexander. When I had enough evidence, I decided to strike. I gathered our entire family, children, parents, and even some of our close friends. I knew it would be cruel, but I couldn't do otherwise. That night I asked everyone to gather at our house. Tatiana didn't suspect anything and continued her usual behavior. When everyone was gathered, I turned on the projector and started showing pictures and videos. Everyone was shocked, including Tatiana. She tried to justify herself, but I wouldn't let her speak. I told everyone how she had betrayed me, how she had deceived me all these months. I couldn't listen to her anymore. Our bond based on trust was broken. The next day, Tatiana packed her things and left the house. We made the decision to file for divorce. The divorce process was much more painful than I could have imagined. Every day seemed like a test. Memories of happy times overwhelmed me with bitterness. I remembered our trips together, holidays, evenings spent together. It all seemed like an illusion now, shattered into dust. Every visit to the lawyer and every court hearing brought new wounds. We had to divide property, discuss financial matters, and most importantly, determine the future of our children. During this time, I lost trust in people. I became withdrawn and aloof, avoiding communication even with close friends. Thoughts that Tatiana, the woman I had lived with for so many years, could do such a thing, did not give me peace. I felt betrayed and alone. Every encounter with her, even through legal procedures, was agonizing. Her image, which once brought joy and comfort, now brought only pain and disappointment. My children were my only support during these difficult times. They supported me despite the fact that they were also suffering because of what was happening. Their care and understanding helped me through this period. We became closer than ever. Our relationship strengthened amidst our shared pain and need to support each other. Time spent with them became a source of comfort and strength for me. They saw my pain and did their best to make me feel better. Tatiana, on the other hand, lost not only her husband, but also the respect of her loved ones. Her infidelity became known in our social circle, and many people turned their backs on her. Even her own parents could not accept what she had done. They judged her and did not support her in her decision. It was a hard blow to her. She lost not only her family, but also the social connections that were important to her. People she considered friends turned their backs on her, not wanting to deal with a traitor. Alexander didn't escape the consequences either. After his relationship with Tatiana became known, he felt pressured by his co-workers and superiors. Soon after, he left the company. Their affair, which had begun so stormy and passionate, ended as abruptly as it had begun. Facing social and professional pressures, their relationship could not withstand the test of reality. They drifted apart, each on their own paths, leaving behind a trail of dashed hopes and damaged relationships. As time passed, I began to rebuild my life. I realized that I couldn't stay in the past and had to move forward. With the help of my children and a few close friends who stayed close, I began to emerge from my cocoon of isolation. I gradually returned to my hobbies, took up sports, and started building new social connections. It was difficult at first, but over time I felt my interest in life returning. The recovery process was slow but important. I began to rediscover the joys of life, little moments of happiness that I had not noticed before. Communication with my children, meetings with friends, trips to nature. All this helped me to distract myself from heavy thoughts and find inner peace. I realized that life goes on despite pain and disappointments, and that I have the strength to cope with any difficulties. The new stage in my life was full of discoveries. I found the strength to forgive Tatiana, not for her, but for myself. This allowed me to get rid of the weight of resentment and start living with a clean slate. Gradually, I began to trust people again. Although I became more cautious in my relationships, my experience taught me the value of sincerity and loyalty, and I strive to surround myself with people who shared these values. Today, as I look back, I realize that the path I have traveled has made me stronger. Difficulties have hardened my character, and I have learned to overcome pain. Life has taught me important lessons that I will always remember. I became more attentive to myself and my loved ones, learned to appreciate every moment and not be afraid of change. My story is one of betrayal and pain, but also of recovery and new beginnings. I want to apologize immediately for possible errors in the text or dubbing. I am just learning, and the language of this channel is not my native language. The dubbing is done with the help of artificial intelligence. Please point out errors so I can fix them and improve the quality of the content. Also, I will be glad if you share your thoughts on the topic. Your support in the comments is very motivating for me to keep looking for new, interesting stories. Thank you for your understanding and participation. Subscribe to the channel and put a bell to not miss new stories.